As I've listened to the stories of thousands of women of all ages, in all kinds of stages, through the years, I've kept their stories locked in the vault of my heart. I feel as if they've been walking around with me all through these years. They've bothered me. They've prodded me. And sometimes kept me up at night. Ultimately, they've increased my passion to reframe and reimagine the powerful positions of mother and matriarch within the family system. I'm a problem solver, so I set out to find a way to perhaps change the trajectory of this silent and sad scenario about a dynamic yet untapped source of potential and purpose sitting in our homes and churches. It is time to come to the table, Heartlifters, and unleash the power of maternal presence into the world. Welcome to Mothering for the Ages, our 2025 theme here on today's Heartlift. I'm Janelle. I am your guide here on this heartlifting journey. I invite you to grab a pen, a journal, and a cup of something really delicious. May today's conversation give you clarity, courage, and a revived sense of camaraderie. You see, you're not on this journey alone. We are unified as Heartlifters and committed to bringing change into the world, one heart at a time. Hello, Heartlifters. I'm Janelle, and I'm so glad to be with you today to bring you this intellectually curious conversation with Dr. Drew Johnson. He writes, the book of Genesis might be the most Darwinian text of the ancient world. Can the ideas of Scripture and evolutionary science be mutually illuminating? In his book, What Hath Darwin to Do with Scripture? Dr. Drew, who is a biblical scholar, calls us beyond creation versus evolution debates to explore the continuities and discontinuities between biblical themes and those of Darwin and modern science. Now, as promised, this year, 2025, I am dedicating to mothering. Well, you might be saying, Janelle, I have no idea what Darwin has to do with mothering. Well, I'll tell you. You'll hear Dr. Drew Johnson and I talking about my experiences as a homeschooling mom back in the day, and how in that day, you really didn't mention Charles Darwin. It was a bit taboo. That might be really hard for you to wrap your mind around in today's culture. But Darwin was something that was avoided. Evolution, avoided is really the proper word. And I just don't want that to be the case in my life with my grandchildren anymore, or with anyone. I want to be able to have an intelligent, well-informed conversation about these topics that were once taboo. Last week, I spoke to marine biologist Rachel G. Jordan with such curiosity. If the ocean had a soul, she helped us really pursue the truths between deep waters of faith and science. And so I'm just continuing this intellectually curious dive into the depths here as we move through the latter parts of summer and into the fall here in North America. I desperately want us as women of faith to be intellectually curious and mentally stable and emotionally healthy and have strong communication skills. I just want us to be the absolute best we can be. So these conversations sounded interesting to me, and the books really sounded interesting, and I hope that you find them interesting as well. We'll continue these conversations over on Heartlift Central, which is on Substack, and over on Instagram at Janelle Reardon. Let's widen our perspectives and our worldviews and be able to just hold really beautiful conversations with the people that we meet along our life's pathway. Okay, welcome, Drew, to the show. Oh, my goodness, Heartlifters, welcome. I want you to welcome Dr. Drew Johnson, okay, to the show today. And Drew and I have been already chatting and laughing because I have no idea how to have this conversation. Because, as I have said, Drew wrote the book, What Hath Darwin to Do with Scripture? So, welcome, Drew.
Thank you. I love the pregnant pause between Dr. Drew Johnson.
Johnson. So. We were laughing about that too. Most of my community will understand that hesitation to call you Dr. Drew. Oh, yes. My goodness. But I was completely intrigued. And as I said to you prior to our hitting record, the shift I am wanting to make in my conversations here on the podcast is we're all about emotional intelligence. We're all about bridging the gap between faith and mental health. And yet I want to become more intelligent in my intellect, if that even is the right sentence. Because I do believe that there was some maybe little t trauma in my parenting back in the day, because now I'm old enough to know that Darwin was a bad word, a bad name. It was to be feared, and it was to be completely neglected. I didn't even teach my children anything. I was homeschooling community, so everything was the Creation Institute, and it was beautiful and lovely. But I have 3 thinkers that I now know, and they're in their 30s. And now they're raising children, my grandchildren. And I want to be an intelligent grandmother. How did this journey to this book? You've written many books, and you have many podcasts, and you've been a professor everywhere around the world. And why this book? Why now?
Yeah, I was fairly ignorant on Darwin when I started this project as well. It started with kind of a question that was just burning, that kept on, a niggling question that keeps coming back to you. And so I'm not a scientist. I'm not, and I did have a few scientist colleagues who read the manuscript and told me what to fix and what to, where to reinforce some ideas. And they were happy with the final product, so that was good.
That's good. I mean, you're with Ivy Press, and I respect Ivy Press so much.
Yeah,
so.
No, it's a great, fantastic press. And I always, that what's the old Hillary Clintonism? Takes a village to raise a book, right? Every book really is lots of conversations with lots of people, lots of help along the way, including my own internal dialogue with Charles Darwin. I read a little bit of him in college, but then I went back and as an adult, as a almost 50-year-old, I'm reading him again.
Okay.
And I'm realizing there's a reason why this guy is so widely read. There's a reason why everybody points to this guy. He's a very intelligent, caring, thoughtful individual. And I mean caring in the sense of, in the same way, I like that you kind of can say, like, maybe I didn't do everything right in focusing on creation, but, I would say, it's not a bad start to give kids a really healthy, deep respect for the beauty of creation, that God's hand is in all of this.
Of course.
And that he allows bad things to happen, but that doesn't deteriorate his love for creation, and that he's going to redeem creation. That's the plan.
That is.
So there's goods to be had there.
Thank you. Appreciate that encouragement.
I think I kind of mailed it in with my own kids too. We always talked about all of these things, but I didn't really go into any detail about it. I think what I wanted to do in this book is say, look, Darwin saw some things. And in fact, my working title, as you probably know, authors, you don't have any say in what the final title is.
No.
It's the marketing department.
Not until you're a big guru, I think. But
yeah,
maybe
until
even
you're really big.
Until you really are $1 million in the bank for them, right?
So
Sorry,
my working title was, and there, I will say, almost all my books, I have preferred their title over my title every time.
Yes, that's true.
Including this one. Mine was, what did Darwin and Scripture notice? As I wanted to draw attention that they're both looking at creation, and they're trying to explain why things are the way they are. And this is the kind of scientific task. In general, I have lots of other books arguing that many of the conceptual ideas of what we call modern science actually come uniquely from the Hebrew Bible, not from the Greeks or Romans.
Mm.
So if you have really nerdy listeners who want to check
I
that
do
out, you
have
can.
nerdy
But
listeners. I
yeah,
do. I do. They're intellectually,
super nerdy. And I don't
yes.
mean because
Okay,
I'm smart. I
super
mean
nerdy.
just because it's like you got to slug through a lot of pages to get to the meat. But so Darwin is noticing he's just he's traveling around the Horn of South America, and he's seeing all of these different creatures in these different environments, and he's trying to figure out what a lot of people are asking his day. He wasn't the only person asking, like, what makes these things fit to their environment? In fact, this was a big
Ah,
question with humans about what
yes.
we now call racial theory, is
Hmm.
did God make races for places? So did he make different races and then put them in different places? Or did he
Hmm.
make different places and the places made the races, right?
Yeah, that's a
Um,
huge question for a great another conversation. We're gonna
yeah.
have you
And so
back.
that one is already floating around in his day, and he just kind of brings that down to
Hmm.
like, well, I'm on the Galapagos Island. We have this small chain of islands, and you have these birds that are all the same kind of bird, but their beaks are shaped differently depending on which island they live on, right?
Fascinating.
Now, any good Christian is going to look at that and go, huh, isn't that like kind of
Wow.
Columbo? Wait, there's just one thing I don't understand.
Yes.
Like you're telling me
Yes.
they're all the same birds, but they have different beaks. And he's trying to puzzle out what
Mm,
forces
mm.
over time could have created this oddity that he sees in lots of different places and lots of different expressions. So I want to highlight with Darwin basically like he's not dumb. He's
No.
actually he's a little Mysterianist. He's not trying to sell a story of evolution that we hear today. That's another thing that's clarified. When we talk about Darwin, we're talking about natural
Okay.
selection. We're not talking about later ideas that he will come up with that he'll start seeding the descent of man from
Hmm.
alongside other species. So those are later developments. Certainly, what we think of evolutionary theory today is not what Darwin was
Hmm.
necessarily selling in his natural selection. He's just really talking about things that we can say are true to any Christian. Doesn't matter whether you're a 7-day literal creationist or
Hmm.
a long creationist, or if you believe in evolution that God uses it some way. We can all say natural selection works. We can show experimentally that it
Wow.
actually happens. In fact, it happens in some species a lot quicker than they used to think. I mean, there's been
Hmm.
experiments that have done in the last 100, or actually, I guess the last 75 years, 80 years, where they're showing natural selection with foxes in Russia, where they thought things that would have taken hundreds and thousands of years ended up taking like 30 years. So
Wow. Why is it
there's all
quicker?
kinds of
Is there a
well, there were just assumptions baked into the
assumption?
system that everything is
Ah,
slow and low,
okay.
and then it turns out some things it's not. Same thing
Hmm.
with geology. It's like everything you see is like water dripping over millions of years, and well, it turns out, a generation ago,
Hmm.
geologists had a change of mind and said maybe some of this is from catastrophic events. Maybe
Okay.
it's not low and slow. Not all
Okay.
of it, but some of it's catastrophic, some of it's low and
Uh-huh.
slow.
So we could say the evolution of even the scientist's brain, like,
Yeah,
what we
the
have
way
in
they're
our
thinking about,
hands, the way we're thinking, the
yeah.
resources we have, the right. Okay.
And I think what you see in just following this discussion out from the 1860s all the way up to the present, I try to highlight here's what Darwin basically said.
Okay.
Here's how evolutionary science today has modified that or debated
Mm-hmm.
that or says they no longer agree with Darwin,
Mm-hmm.
and then here's what the biblical authors are doing with the same topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm trying to do is put the biblical text in direct conversation with what Darwin and evolutionary science are trying to say about
Yeah.
how things started. Everybody's telling an origin story. Everybody's trying
Yes.
to explain why things are the way they are and how they got from the beginning to now. So whether
Hmm.
you're doing that through an evolutionary story or whether you want to do that through a literal 7-day creation, we're all trying to tell that story.
Hmm.
And I try to show in the book, people are also telling that story in order to tell people, so this is how we should live today, right? This is how we
Yes.
should think about things, right? So I give the
Correct.
example of a recent evolutionary theory on friendliness, where
Hmm.
the one of the people who writes the book says, okay, so this is basically what we know about the evolutionary trait of friendliness and how it was selected. So therefore, here's how we should vote in a democratic republic. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's bold.
Wow.
Like
Do
went
tell.
straight to Joe Biden, right?
Yes.
And
And do take me there because this is where we're living, if you don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah, no. And you
Okay.
mean how did they work it out?
Yeah. Like, how did they work that
Um,
out? How did they go from that
well,
to Biden?
I was interested in the fact that they just thought that was an obvious move. That if you go
That's
from
what
the
I mean.
beginning of
Yes.
humankind
Mm-hmm.
and humans are getting, there are certain features that we would now call friendliness that are getting naturally biologically selected just through, again, they have to tell a fictional story. You're like, you
Uh-huh.
have to imagine dogs around the camp, humans are doing certain hominids or, are doing certain things. Humans begin acting in certain ways that causes this trait to be selected over and over again in this
Oh,
environment. Again, they're not actually describing anything
wow.
real that ever happened. They're creating
Right.
a creation story, trying to explain how something, an origin story from the
Oh,
past that explains why we are the way we are today. And then the interesting thing for me is they feel like this gives you the impulse to then say, well, therefore, we're going against our evolutionary function, this natural
right.
selection function, if we don't have friendliness as a basis of society or something like that.
Right.
Which you can argue yes or no on all of these things. I
Which
mean,
people do. I know you're in that realm of the world that I'm not in, and that's why I
right.
wanted you here because there
When it
are
gets
arguments going
dicey
on
too.
different levels, and it gets
Yes.
dicey. It's getting really dicey.
Especially the chapters on sex. So I just basically said, look,
Yeah. Yeah.
here's the niggling question. I was
It's chapter
puzzling for
11.
conversations with people um, about this idea of natural selection. And I teach the Old Testament every semester.
Oh,
And so I
wow.
read through it every semester with students.
Okay.
And it just hit me like, wait, scarcity of resource,
Mm.
sexual propagation of a particular line of species, and then like fit to environment. This is exactly what Genesis 1 through 11 is about.
It
And
is.
as I did more research, I was a little surprised to find out it's Genesis 1 through 11. The Hebrew account is the only place in human history where anybody is talking about these things. So genetic
Wow.
propagation, or sorry, sexual propagation, a lot of people talk about like creating children and ancestors, but
Hmm.
nobody's putting these things in direct correspondence with each other. That
Hmm.
scarcity creates violence, which Genesis 1 through 11 has a very clear scarcity
So
and
clear.
violence
Hmm.
association. That having children is important, and not just having children. This is the thing that I think is really
Mm.
interesting about Genesis 1 through 11. We think in terms of procreation, making babies,
We
but
do.
actually, when you follow that line of thought out through Scripture, it's actually not about making babies. It's about making great great grandchildren that you're never going to meet, and how should you act today for them, right?
I
So
knew
yeah,
that's
I
why I
know.
had you here. I knew it. I just
Let
knew it. It's
nobody feel
epigenetics.
guilty.
It's epigen. I
Yeah,
know. I know. Every
right,
time I teach that in any type of mothering or parenting, moms are
right.
like, my kids are so screwed. Excuse my language.
Yeah. No, you have to have forgiveness right us on,
You
grace
got
and
to live in
forgiveness
a
right us
practice
on
of self
the sober
forgiveness.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I don't mean to
Yeah.
talk over you, but you just hit a
No,
really
no.
big
And so
alarm. Okay. So, woo, coming back.
yeah, so this is
Why
of
then? Tell
central
me why.
concern.
No, tell me
Why
why
why?
though. Why that the sexual propagation
Oh,
isn't about procreation. It's about our great, great, great grandchildren because I have been preaching that. And my first book was on
oh, okay.
parenting when I should have never written a book on parenting. I should. I'm not going to write it till I'm probably 90 now, Lord willing. Who did I
Okay, so
think
we're
I
getting real
was?
talk now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like real
Um,
talk. This is good.
yeah, no, me
Okay.
too. So the I think what's interesting in the Hebrew Bible, and you can find this in all kinds of people's thinking, but the Hebrew Bible like lays it down as part and parcel about what it means to be the children of God. Is you have
Yes.
he blessed them to be fruitful and multiply, and right, but he blessed the animals to do that as well. That's
He
not a
did.
unique human trait, right?
Okay.
So
Good.
that is about filling the earth. But what you see coming up, and I when I say the Hebrew, I mean the Old Testament. And whatever I say about the Old Testament, I mean it carries on into the New Testament. There's not some
Mm,
wall between them where everything stops and we start with something new. It's all
beautiful.
continued on.
Love
And
this.
part of that thinking is what life means is that they call it life, long life in the land. He lived long in the land. The
Oh,
fear of the psalmist and
yes.
others, do not let my face be cut off from the land. And you're like, what do you mean your
Yes.
face be cut off from the land? Well, you just look at the context. What they're saying is, don't let me die childless, right?
And
Genesis,
no,
the
it's
book
such
of
a
Genesis is all about barren women, right? And God opening and
yes.
closing wombs and making sure certain lines are going forward, right? So
Yes.
I
Huh.
feel now I may be wrong, but I
Mm.
feel okay. I learned from counselors. When people say I feel
Yes.
that I feel that we generally are not ever concerned about like these propagational or generational concerns,
Mm-mm.
and less like fertility problems arise. And then all
Yes.
of a sudden we're like, oh, then you start thinking down the line.
Right.
We adopted two children and then had two
Oh.
accidental biological children, which we couldn't pull any more accidents after two. But
Always the case. I know. It's crazy.
so we go through we went through a period of thinking about like it just forces you to think about
Hmm.
all kinds of things, your
It
own
does.
bodies and the
Hmm.
future of your name and etc.
I love
Um,
that.
so I think this
Mm.
concern, like in China, it's not, for orphan parents in China, or as they call them, people who had one child, the child
Hmm.
grew up, mom went through menopause, child dies of an accident or cancer, and that
Yes.
was their only hope for their name being carried
I
forward or for
know.
their lives being carried forward. And as a parent, you feel like you pour everything into your kids that they're going to pour
Sure
into their
do.
kids, that they're going to
You
pour into their
sure do.
kids,
Good, bad, and
good and
ugly.
ill. Yep,
Hmm.
exactly. So this is a constant concern in the scriptures, and they want a certain type of life. And again, it's not like, I know we talk about the land flowing with milk and honey, but when you look at what they
Uh-huh.
actually mean by that, they just mean like you can survive here, you can get by, and you can cause righteousness and justice and beneficence for non-Hebrews around you. You can extend the
Yes.
goods of justice. I know a lot of people think biblical justice means like punishment, but it
No.
actually means a good and fair life that cares for the vulnerable,
Oh, love this so
that
much. I
protects the
want to
most
take your
vulnerable. So
class. Oh my gosh. That's got
you're
to be
getting it all. This is everything I know right here. So
yes.
you're getting there's no
Oh,
depth.
I don't have to go to Hope College. This is fantastic.
Exactly.
But I really love
Um,
Holland, Michigan. Okay. We digress.
so this is yeah, no, this is in many ways you'll see Darwin addressing all of these same concerns. He's puzzled by a lot of them.
Uh-huh.
In the sex chapter I have to talk. It was actually a very depressing
Mm.
set of chapters to write because I think it was the first time I had to wrestle with the fact that most evolutionary biologists just assume that what they call forced copulation or sexual assault is what we would call it, is the
Mm.
main means of reproduction throughout
Oh,
evolutionary history.
ow. Oh
And
gosh.
it's typically the women who are doing it to the men because in almost all species, women are bigger and stronger than men. But amongst humans, we're the rare species where men are bigger and stronger than the women, and so
Mm.
we have a special case of male and female sexual violence in
Yeah.
hominids, apes, humans, etc.
Okay.
And so I really get nervous when I hear
Mm.
Christians who are kind of just trying to quickly relate evolution to the Bible and say, well, God used evolution as some kind of shaping tool. And I'm like, I don't think you're wrestling with what people think actually happened in evolution. Or you have to tell a really weird story where you're like,
Hmm.
no, they didn't compete violently. They just cooperated the whole way through. And I'm like, I don't know. I have personal experience that tells me that probably did not happen in such a cooperative way.
Right.
I think there are areas in which you can see cooperation at like the cell level, even
Uh-huh.
up to like bonobo chimpanzees are famous for not hunting and killing other. They're the only apes that don't hunt and kill other monkeys and apes.
Wow.
So they're
Wow.
peaceable apes, right?
Peaceable apes.
But
Okay.
but they also live in a jungle that's full of food. They're like the only ones that
Mm.
don't really have to go far to get
Yeah,
fed.
they don't have to scavenge. Okay. I think
So
that's the
all
word,
of
but
these kind of little facts and pictures being drawn by evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology, they actually have very dark dimensions that I don't think people are fully wrestled with. I haven't fully wrestled. I haven't worked
hmm.
any of this out. My book, I'm not trying to convince people
Right. That's
of
what
an
you say.
evolutionary view or anything. I'm just
Hmm.
trying to say, like, if we could pull the biblical authors into the 21st century, kind of explain to them what people think is going on, how would they
Yes.
react? Where would they critique? Where would they say, yeah, something like that? Where would they
Uh-huh.
say, no, you're missing, this big thing? And so I try to put them in direct conversation rather than doing the kind of thing that, a lot of times a book comes because you're frustrated with all the other books on it.
Of course.
And,
Yeah.
there
And you're
can be a
teaching it.
move.
So,
Yeah. And there
I
could be
mean,
a
now
move
you
where
can
people just
say,
say, like,
students here, it's
yeah,
your thesis, it's your
Genesis 1 through 11.
dissertation.
Oh, I don't assign my books. Yeah. But
Oh, no, no, no. I know you don't, but
yeah.
they do know you are an author, and it is a great
Yeah.
resource for them if they want
So
additional.
yeah, so they can take it on if they want, but
Yeah.
that kind of move where you just say, yeah, God, like evolution happened, God used it, and then at some point he takes on humans as his image, or maybe his humans grew into his image or something, and then history in Genesis starts at chapter 12 with Abraham getting the
Yep.
call, and that's where the real story starts.
Mm-hmm.
And I've written quite a bit on Genesis, and I agree. Like there's Genesis 1 through 11 is different than Genesis 12 through 36,
Very
then
much so.
37 through the end, right? Um,
I will point
but
all of my
I think that,
heart
sorry,
lifters to the, is that in one particular book or is
I have a
that,
book called Genesis 1 through
yeah,
11,
you do.
the
Okay,
universal story,
perfect.
which
Okay.
if it's a popular level kind of here's things you need to know about Genesis 1 through 11 in
Yeah,
order not
that's
to make
great.
basic mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but I think it's very clear that the book of Genesis, whoever kind of finally put that thing together, and I don't know who that was or when that was. I don't know if that's like a
Mm-hmm.
Moses era thing or something later.
Right.
Um, they clearly expected Genesis 1 through 11 to be read in coordination with 12 through the end, right? They
Mm-hmm.
believe, and I'm a Pentateuch, Torah, books of Moses scholar. That's where I spend most of my time.
Okay.
Um, those books keep coming back to creation narrative over and over again in very subtle ways that it's difficult in the English to pick up. In the Hebrew, it's like slaps you in the face.
I wish I
Um,
could do that. It.
so Deuteronomy 4 says, "You shall make no graven images
Mm-hmm.
of anything male or female." And now people will start to recognize the language. No images of anything male or female. No creeping things that creep along the ground. No winged birds of the air. No fish under the sea. Nor the sun, moon, or stars. Now, most people will go like, "I've heard that list before. That sounds a lot like Genesis 1." In fact, it's the only place in the entire Bible where that list of things shows up is in Genesis 1 and Deuteronomy 4. And so we go,
Wow.
okay, they're
Okay.
calling out, it's a hook, right? Calling back to
Yes.
Genesis 1. And it does, and it says the reason you shouldn't make these images is because God has appointed them to all humans. You're like, wait, I thought he was going to say God created these things, right?
Appointed.
Yeah. And so it says don't worship these things. And then you go
Mm-hmm.
into Genesis 1, it doesn't say anything about worship. It says what God created. So what they've done is kind of zippered these texts together using that very special list of
I
created
got it.
objects.
Hmm.
And Paul later in Romans refers back to this by just saying, "Don't worship the created things, worship the Creator." Right?
Right.
He's like
Yes. Kind of dumbs it
he's,
down. I
he's
don't
like
know. Makes
he's
it
like, "Hey, if you're
accessible.
paying attention, you should have picked up what they're laying down." But notice they didn't say that out loud. They actually let you do the work by drawing upon the creation narrative in order to make this point. Jesus, when asked
Mm.
about marriage and divorce, which I think is clearly some older men who want to write their women off so they can go get
Oh
with a
my
younger lady,
gosh.
he says it was not so from the beginning. Uh, what God has put together, the marriage line, what
Yes.
God
God
has
is.
put together, and let nobody tear asunder, right? And that should cling to each other sexually, right? So they're asking
Mm.
about divorce, and he goes to sex in Genesis 2.
He
So he's
does.
like, I know what you're thinking about, right?
Oh my
So
gosh.
the scriptures are constantly calling back to Genesis, the creation, all the way up through, I think, Noah as well, including the idea that there is coming judgment and there is a place of refuge for a sure and coming judgment, from the
Hmm.
ark to the blood-stained houses of Egypt
Right.
to Rahab's house and Jericho, right? It just keeps going on, and
Oh,
now
it's so
Jesus'
beautiful.
blood, right? Yeah, this
Mm.
kind of thing.
Hmm.
So this is not text in Genesis 1 through 11 where you can just go like, oh, that's like their weird origins, functional, metaphysical view of the universe. You can kind
Hmm.
of set that aside and pick up the story at Genesis 12. I'm
Hmm.
like, well, that's not how the biblical authors view that text. They view it
Right.
as integral to all of their thinking.
I love that you
So,
say that because I think that's just completely vital to where we are today, the
and
integration.
I will say it is a lot easier to see that in the Hebrew
Mm. Right,
than
which,
English. English translations often, look, our English translations are fantastic, but they can't do everything,
what's
right?
your
And
favorite?
I would say my favorite is if you took the NIV, the King James, ESV, and NASB and kind of compared them. You could do
Hmm.
some NRSV as well. You can
Yep.
throw comparing three English translations will get you really far into
Okay.
understanding even
I
even stuff
have done
that's
that
tricky.
personally. Yep.
Yeah. So again, we're like drowning in a supermarket of good English
Oh
translations.
my word. Yes, we
So
are. Exactly.
so we
And I
can't
memorized
complain.
the King James, obviously, in my day. So it's
Well,
my
I keep
go-to.
going back I used to kind of like a lot of people kind of make fun of, I hate to admit this, I used to make fun of the King James because of it's got a weird history. But
Hmm.
as a biblical scholar, I have found that sometimes it nails the translation better than any of the modern
Feel
translations.
like that
And
personally, but I'm not a biblical scholar. you know?
It's paying attention to the literature
Uh-huh.
of Hebrew and Greek,
Yep.
more than just saying like, "Hey, let me reword this so you can understand it in Czech or Greek or
Oh
sorry,
no, I want to know
English
what
or
it
something."
means. I
Yeah,
maybe would have the wherewithal to study Hebrew at this age, but I certainly didn't back in the day. I'm sure that I probably couldn't. But anyway, I'll just call
yeah,
on
our
what
brains
biblical
don't work the
scholars.
same. Yeah,
No, I will call on you. You said I want to bring this into something that you said, Drew. Uh, and I'm not quoting it directly, but let us do the work. I think that's why I wanted you here. Is you're like, I want you to tell me what to think. I know I do. Like the whole time you've been talking, I'm like,
right.
okay, so when my sweet little inquisitive, already presenting intelligence grandchildren, you know, ask me, did I come from an ape? I mean, that's where I'm at. But
Right.
I love that you said, and I'll have to listen back and really get the quote right. It's you're making me do the work. Like do the work.
Yeah.
Do the work, Janelle. Do the work, follower of Christ, and know for yourself what you think. I think
Hmm.
that's my biggest uh pounding the table is that I just celebrated 44 years of turning my life towards Christ as a senior in college. 44 years. Where did that go? And second, I just let pastors and this is my story, tell me what to think.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me who to marry. Like very unhealthy systems, you know, or just say you shouldn't marry outside of this stream we called them of
Hmm.
churches. And I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's you didn't do it. You were there Sunday night, Wednesday night. I remember asking one time, can I go to a different church? They have a really great, I have a lot of friends. No, you have to be here on
Hmm.
Sunday nights. And I listened. And so there, I think that's just the biggest reason I love what you do. And I wanted you here just to help all of us be able to think for ourselves, talk for ourselves,
Right.
know who we are. And so if someone says the friendliness trait, you know, was this and that and the other, and it's now showing up in the Biden administration or whatever you were saying, that I have an answer that is my own. Does that make any sense? Do you have
Oh yeah,
students that
and
say
I
this
can
to
hear
you?
your teaching and counseling because in
I
counseling you get
know.
this too, right? Just tell me what to do,
Yes,
and I'll do it. In
absolutely.
trauma, maybe I will. In a crisis, maybe I will for today to get
For
you through the
today,
crisis. Yeah.
yeah, I just need
Um,
something, but
but we're
thank
not in
you.
crisis, right? We're not in this kind of
No.
like this is a low crawling problem that we can
Yeah.
feel like we don't know what's going on here. I do have an I don't care about selling books, as you know. Like I'm not making any
Yes.
money on books, and I hope I can write a
Sadly.
popular version of this someday.
Oh,
But
I
I
think
have a
it.
very I
Mm,
have a very nerdy book in which I argue the biblical literature is like a philosophical system, and I don't mean that in some
yeah.
kind of canny way.
Mm-mm.
That it actually I've been surprised again as I've read it, and I became a Christian when I was 20 in the military.
Oh, okay.
Um, and had a day and night like
I was
radical
20.
conversion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Me
and the
too.
more I read it, the more I realized like, oh, God holds children, women, foreigners, grown men, old people, all personally accountable to be able to discern whether a prophet who comes in gives signs and wonders given to him by God or her, and depending on the
Thank
prophet,
you. Mm-hmm.
um, shows signs and wonders given them by God but then misleads Israel.
Yeah.
Because God says in chapter 13 of Deuteronomy, I'm going to send prophets, I'm going to authenticate them with signs and wonders, and then I'm going to cause them to mislead you, to test you,
Oh,
to know
gosh.
whether you truly love me with all your mind and body. And I think
Wow.
that to me,
Wow.
I realized, and this is in Deuteronomy where it's like,
Mm.
love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. And when you talk about him, when you go along the way with your children, when you rise up, when you lie down, right? This is training for all of us. It actually
One of
has a
my
pretty,
favorite books. Mm-hmm.
average, Joseph McKeebrew has to actually live and practice and understand the instruction of God well enough that he can smell the bull stank
Oh,
of a prophet who has just given a sign and wonder, right? So, I mean, this is really
yes.
high demands. Right.
Cognitive dissonance in the highest,
Yes.
at the
And so they
highest.
should be able to say, as belonging to this community, they should be able to
Woo.
go, we saw the signs and wonders, so we're listening to what you say, but what you
Yep.
say doesn't fit with what Moses instructed us, what God instructed us through Moses.
Thank you, Drew.
Jesus himself submits himself to the same testing. He knows doing signs and wonders is not sufficient according to the Torah, that they should listen to him, that everything he says must also extend from the instruction of God through Moses as well. And so he says, I did not come to abolish the Torah of Moses. I came to
Hmm.
fulfill it, to bring it to fullness, right? So
Said so
that
well.
requires us all to think.
Yeah.
And we all want to be lazy. Every
We
single
do.
one of my students, well, minus a few, they just
Correct.
want to be
That's
like,
always
just
is the universal.
tell me the
Right.
data. Just tell me what I'm supposed to know, right? And
For
I'm
the
like, no, I'm
test.
trying
Yeah.
to get you to see something. There's
Okay.
there's nothing I can tell you that is what you can know. I'm trying to get you to read text differently. I'm trying to get you to understand yourself and your relationship to God differently.
Mm. Mm.
There's no fact I can tell you that will help you get there.
Okay.
Unless I have to slap you in the face with some facts to get you off of, get you off of it.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so that's a difficult task, and this is why I think I appreciate what Darwin is doing, even if I think like, okay, I'm, plus minus on how it all works out. But what Darwin is doing is saying, everybody, evolutionists, seven-day creation, we're all looking at the same data. It's not like people
Yeah.
have secret information somewhere. They're
Okay.
just saying, how do we understand this? How do we
That's
interpret
it.
what's going on? How do we
Mm-hmm.
explain how this thing came to be the way it is today?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there aren't right and wrong explanations, but they're certainly better and worse. And
Yes.
so I think the biblical
I love that
literature,
it's not
including
binary for you.
Jesus, is
Yep.
trying to get us towards, we don't even have to get to right. Let's just get to what makes the better ones better and do that stuff. And
I
let's
love it.
avoid the obvious traps of what makes for worse interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
And worse interpretations are almost always going to be, I relied uncritically on someone who told me something was true and I just went with it for the rest of my life. You have to,
Yes.
when you start out as a child, when you start learning
You
something, you have to
do.
rely
You
uncritically on
do.
somebody.
Yes.
But the goal, I think Paul says something about this, like, I fed you milk, but you're
Mhm.
supposed to grow up and eat solid food, right? And
Yes. That's
so,
what I want. That's why you're here. Yes.
yeah.
I
I
want
say
some
this also,
solid
I was
food.
a pastor for 8 years in a
You had to be.
non-denominational charismatic church. And there wasn't a doctor or lawyer in that church. It was mainly blue collar. And some of the most biblically literate, wise people I've ever met theologically were in that church.
I
They knew
love
scripture.
that.
They had great theology because they knew scripture and they put it into practice. Um,
Wow.
so, so I'm
Wow.
not talking about some highfalutin, oh, I'm an
Yeah. That
intellectual,
we
so
have to be.
everybody should be, yeah. I'm talking
Yes.
brass tacks down to earth. Like I had the old lady squad after I would preach with my seminary degree would come up and point out, like, I don't think you were paying attention in your sermon to what happens 4 chapters later to David. Yeah.
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
gosh. I love that old lady
young
squad
man with my
term.
identity issues.
That
Yeah.
a
It was just
term?
like,
Can I like trademark that? The old lady squad? That's
yeah, it's the old
amazing.
lady. Well, they were very polite and they were very
Yeah,
encouraging and they were very loving,
smart.
but they knew scripture better than I did. And they were trying to help me
Yes.
understand that I had missed something. And
Oh my gosh. We've
it
been
was like the
talking about
best
invisible
growing
women.
experience. Yeah. Oh,
Women
yeah.
Invisible. Just had an
Oh,
author on
yeah.
who wrote a
Those
book on
people
that.
changed my life.
Nameless Women.
Yeah.
The old lady squad had a title, but those women changed her life. I love that. Okay, can I read something?
Yes, ma'am.
I think you wrote it. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read something. The culture wars of evolution have set our minds on two paths, more like two ruts. Our creation theologies can ride or die with the Jesus fish or the Darwin fish on their bumpers. Ironically, a devout Christian driving that Jesus fish car, a vehicle that resulted from centuries of applied science, poo-poos those scientists for promoting an anti-Christian agenda. Elsewhere in the world, a theoretical physicist naively dismisses religion as blind faith in invisible spirits. I do not want to contribute to the supposed conflict between science and faith. I want to do something much more disruptive. I want us to read scripture for its own views on natural selection.
Hmm.
Thank you.
That was so good that I'm convinced the editor must have touched that up.
Bro, I know. It's so true. I'll read or
There's
I'll
no
reread
way.
my
No way I wrote a sentence that good.
I know. What do you call them when your galleys? And I'm like,
Yeah, the
oh, I
proofs.
know I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
write that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to editors.
Yes. So John
I good
Boyd,
though.
thank you for
Yeah,
that.
that's
Thank you for that
so
copy
good.
edit. Yeah, yeah.
That's really, really well done. I taught writing forever, and I love a good sentence like,
When I
now
think
he's
with
killing me.
children, you I was a children's pastor was my main job for eight
Oh, me
years. And
too.
so
Oh
again,
my gosh.
they
Ooh.
taught me a lot as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what I realize is children are they can read adults often better than adults can.
Without a doubt.
Because they don't really have an agenda. They're just like, you seem really uncomfortable with what you're saying.
And they just came out of liminal space. I mean, they just came out
Right.
of, and get that language. They just came out of
Yeah.
it. They just came from heaven to earth, and they're still there. They're fact. I love them.
So yeah, and they're great. I mean, like you can't hide.
Uh-uh.
There's nowhere to hide when you're in a room full of like second graders, right?
There
Or
isn't. And
fourth
they
and
are,
fifth, you're done. You're done
you're
skis, right?
cooked at sixth. Yeah. And then I taught high school as
So,
well. Woo. Yeah.
oh,
So,
I can't even imagine. But I think the other thing that I learned in that period because immediately realized I did not know what I was doing. I started reading all kinds of elementary education stuff and um that as long as you open, I think what most people want is they don't want to think for themselves, but if you can push them to think little bit. What they really need is they need a field within which they can play with some very clear fences where you say like, look, you cross these fences, you're going to be
yes.
dealing with some other issues, or it can go sideways on you.
Love that.
But you can work with this in the field. And I think as long as they have that field, the ruts, if you give children a field to play in, you won't come back 10 years later and find a bunch two deep ruts going through the middle of the field.
You
You'll find
won't.
paths all over the place, right?
Yes. And they're
And so,
reading and they're,
yeah.
yes, they're
And they sense
open.
that fear, right?
They do
In
sense fear.
adults.
Oh my gosh,
I
yes.
know lots of people your age that homeschooled children
Mm-hmm.
and have said the same thing. There was a lot
Okay.
of fear-based things going
I'm
on.
glad to
And
hear
I
that.
now see it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
But I
but the
don't want
great
to
thing is,
perpetuate that to my great great grandchildren, as you were
well, and
saying before.
you have a therapeutic spirit, so kids also at 30 or 40 when they see their parents change, like they take they warmly welcome the change, right? They can go like, hey,
Or they
you're a
like,
different
what?
person.
Who are you? You know,
Yeah, and they lose a little bit of that comfort caricature they had of you
they
from a
do.
child, but they can respect the change. And I saw it with my own mother who died of Alzheimer's, and even in her Alzheimer's,
Oh,
I saw that change going through with her. My father
oh,
as well, and I think it's
oh.
so it gives me hope that anything that I've screwed up is actually still reconcilable as
It
long as I stay
is.
plastic and I keep
That's
an
it.
honest
Stay
conversation going,
plastic.
right? Yeah,
Oh, you just said it, and my heart left just say, Janelle, stop interrupting. But I get so darn
that's no
excited. I
problem.
get so excited. And you just said it, stay plastic, which means neuroplasticity, as you guys know, and also to stay honest and have honest
Hmm.
conversations. And
Yeah,
now we're into parenting, and I love it so much. I could talk to you for so long,
yeah.
Drew. I could. You are helping in so many ways, but I don't want to leave. Okay, I really do want to know selfishly how to create a little yard and clear fences. I
Mhm.
love that picture. A white picket fence would be beautiful or something for my
Mhm.
grandchildren and then my great grandchildren now in this conversation because it is bothering me.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, how can I speak intelligently and guide them? Which I know the one answer is, well, I don't know. I mean, I learned this in my pageant world. This is how you answer a question you don't know.
Mm.
Well, I don't know the answer to that right now, but I'll find out and
Right.
I'll get back to you.
That's pastor training as well.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It should be.
Wow, great. I'm
Yeah.
ready to be a pastor. Oh my gosh. But yeah, how can I, what do
Yeah.
I say when they say to me, honestly, did I come from an ape? I really want to know. And I
Yeah.
know that's 5 hours of conversation, but do I just say,
Well, we can
what?
say some basic things like
Okay,
nobody believes, like literally nobody believes humans came from apes. So
really?
no
Okay,
evolutionists believe that. They
okay,
believe humans co-evolved and some broke out and became hominids like Neanderthals and Homo naledi and these other ones,
okay.
Australopithecus. And some became eventually what we call modern humans about
Okay.
150,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago. The timelines shift when they find new
The
things. So that
timeline
also
was
becomes,
always the bane of my fear because
yeah,
it was
it's
13,000 years in the school of creation. And I'm
right.
trying to tell my kids, well, then what about dinosaurs and what about the ice age?
Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's yeah. So there's lots of, and I think it's, and when people ask me like, well, what do you think? So you think evolution is true? I'm like, I actually don't know. I've become more agnostic on kind of every front.
Mm,
So what I try to do in the book is at the
hmm.
beginning and the end, I tried to tie very carefully to, focus on what the biblical authors focus on. There's two
Okay.
chapters for the creation of the universe.
Okay.
There's lots of chapters. I mean, there's, like 40 chapters on the creation of the tabernacle, which is mostly about like fasteners and goat skin and,
Yes.
right.
Curtains and
So if you think
fabric,
about making things, the making
jewels.
of the universe does not get a lot of coverage.
It
And I think
doesn't.
that's intentional. Because I think it was a
Ah.
little bit mysterious to ancient Hebrews as well. Like they knew that God created it. They knew that he put everything together. But the mechanical side, they seem to be a little bit like offhands. They actually are more restrictive than other cultures will go into a lot more detail. The
Yeah.
Egyptians, obviously,
Hmm.
um, Mesopotamians, even the Romans and Greeks have kind of longer stories. You get the sense when you read those, like, okay, we know God did it. We know he had a structure. We know it was all about creating habitats and inhabitants for those habitats. So he cares very much
Yes.
about fit to environment and proper fit to environment.
Fit to environment. Oh
Um,
my God, I love that so
the
much.
what they really focus on over the course of Scripture, you could get this from the Old Testament, but
Hmm.
it's even more so in the New Testament. I call it the taking the Gloria Patri as it was in the beginning, it now is, and evermore shall be.
Hmm.
Uh, changing that to the biblical authors don't believe that about the nature of the universe. They say, as it was in the beginning, is not that way right now, but
Uh-huh.
will one day return to be,
They do.
right?
That's what
And
I've been
that's
taught for sure.
the reorientation of the universe, that the universe became disoriented, misoriented, you could say it lots
Yeah,
of different ways, is cancerous, corrupt, fractured, broken in lots of
sure.
different ways. But they envision anything about the present universe
Hmm.
is helpful and continuous. It goes into the new heavens and new earth, the age of resurrection, but it's not identical with that. Things are going to
Hmm.
be reoriented,
I've
I think, is
absolutely
a
been
good
taught that.
metaphor.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think in many ways I could say, like, yeah, if you're Darwin looking at the universe, then absolutely, you're right. That this is how the universe works right now. They just want to make sure that this is not how the universe is always going to work. That there's going to be
Hmm.
not a completely new law, not an absolute overturning of the old ways, and not even a rupture of the physical universe, but a reorientation to the way it's supposed to be. That things will
Right.
operate beneficently and flourishingly,
Free
and
fall. Right.
there's all kinds of very standard
Hmm.
metaphors that people use here. I like to use the example that I heard in seminary, I think, which is, cancer cells are not cells that invade the body. They
Hmm.
are merely good body cells that have turned against the body and convinced other cells to do the same thing. That's what cancer is. And that kills you, right? Which
It
is
does.
really like shocking when you think about it at that
Yeah.
level. Um,
Yeah.
which means that the human body cell, the creation that we call the human body cell, is a good thing, but it can be misoriented, and that can cause death and
Hmm.
corruption and decay and tears
Hmm.
apart families and does all the horrible things, trauma, etc.
So many
Um,
things.
so it's a little hint, a little physical indicator that there could be a way in which the world exists where human body cells never turn against the body, where they
Hmm.
are always flourishing
Hmm.
towards the way and extend that out and kind of to the dirt, the
Yes.
steel beams under my feet right
Soil, the
now,
breath.
like put it
Hmm.
all out, right? Um, so I think that's where the biblical authors spend most of their focus, but it's built upon this, but they have a long discussion of, well, what's it like in between those times?
Right.
Um, and what's it like is when everything gets twisted, food becomes scarce. That creates violence.
Is.
Violence means you're not fit for the environment God wants you to be in, which means you got to be
Ooh,
kicked out, exiled, sent somewhere
ooh, that is
else.
so.
Um,
Wow. That's
so I
sorry.
think the biblical author, no, I mean, this is all shocking to me when I was kind of putting this together for the book. I was actually very surprised at what I was even finding, and
Hmm.
that that what the biblical authors want you to know is there actually is a direct relationship between how you treat the vulnerable in your community, how you treat your children, how you build your house, how you treat your animals. All of this is part of the Torah of
Yes.
Moses. There actually is a connection between that and whether you're fit to the land God has called you to live in, right? Wherever that is.
Wow.
Um, and that moral crimes are not separate from the physical universe, that they're actually all
Mm-mm.
enmeshed together.
Based on
So
the environment's scarcity, which leads to
yeah,
violence, which is so, oh
and
my
they
gosh, that is
and they think
so,
this is all connected together. I mean, it's the
ugh.
dirt that opened up to receive Abel's blood.
Yes,
It's
it
the
did.
dirt from which his blood cried to God
Yes.
as oppression. Noah is named Noach because he's going to bring relief from the curse of the dirt. At
Mm-hmm.
the end of the flood, God says, I will never curse the dirt again because the intention of man's heart is evil all the time, which that was the problem in the beginning.
It
That doesn't
was.
get dealt away with, but
Mm-mm.
the curse of the dirt gets dealt with. That
Mm.
God cares that much about the dirt. Noah, he makes a covenant, a treaty with humans and animals in parallel and with the dirt. Um, so I think, naive notions like we're here to use and abuse this earth. We're going to go to heaven when we die. So that's the big eject handle at the
Yeah,
end of life.
right. I get
Like
it
they're
out.
not having it. Like they
Mm-mm.
actually think that our relation to the earth is very intimate, connected, and that
Oh,
we
I
have
think
obligations to
so.
each other and everything around
Hmm.
us. So,
Is that why the promise of the land flowing with milk and honey was so profound?
right. Yeah. Okay.
I
You
know it's a
should
whole
not get
nother
me started on that
conversation. I
topic
know,
because,
but I want to,
but
and
their
maybe you'll
connection to
just
the
come back.
earth, anybody who's been to Israel or Jordan
Hmm.
or Syria or maybe not Lebanon, but anybody who's been to Israel, Jerusalem, that Judah, the Judean hills, Central Hill Country,
Yeah.
knows that is not arable soil. There is not any natural water flowing through 99% of that land. And so their connection to the dirt actually becomes more intimate because God has promised to bring the necessary water, not for them to have abundance, but for them to
Oh,
have sufficiency. And they're going to have to work that dirt. They're going to have to remove all the rock because it's very rocky soil if you've ever been to
okay.
Israel.
I have not.
Um, it actually puts them in a very tight connection with crop rotation and the
Uh-huh.
need for God to supply the part that He has to supply,
Okay. So
so that their
dependence,
works, that their fruit of their labors actually comes to fruition.
but he makes provision for sustainability with them, if that's what
Yes,
I'm hearing you
yeah.
say. So
As I
that's
as
a
I
whole
say it,
different, ah,
the ancient Fertile Crescent, there's only one really crappy part of the ancient Fertile Crescent that's not fertile, and that's the land of Israel. Everywhere else is abundantly fertile given the surrounding region, but Judah and
mm,
below,
mm,
even
mm.
Samaria and below the Jezreel Valley, it is not fertile. It actually
Okay.
was land where they could survive as long as God brought the rains and they worked the land.
So
So,
that is that's the integration we've been talking about this whole time.
yep. Yep. So
Wow.
platitudes and quick dismissals and like, oh, that can't be right.
Hmm.
None of that works in the world of the biblical literature, right? Like
You're
the
right.
Bible is constantly drawing you in and making it more, not, I
Always.
wouldn't say more complicated, but it's always making you
No,
more connected. Like,
I think so. I mean, the older I get, the more I study, the more I don't know. That's an old cliche,
right.
but
Me
it is
too. And
so true. I
I read
mean,
it every
and
semester and learn new things from my students, learn
I'm
new things from the
sure
text. Yeah.
as a teacher, yes, I know. And that's why I teach, because I have insatiable need to learn.
Right.
So, Drew, I thank you for this amount of time that you have given
Yeah.
to my community.
Thanks for letting me blabber, Janelle.
No, it's really holy blabber. Is that a word? I don't know. It's a phrase.
Just
It's
now.
just,
Yeah.
it is an invitation for us to know more. And I so appreciate it. And honestly, I mean, I'm not going to fear anymore. Just going to open a conversation with my children, my grandchildren, and anyone else around me. But I think you are a vehicle for us to agree to disagree, which is what I think Christ is calling us all to right now. To agree to disagree and to be intelligent.
Yeah. And if we're truly, I think there's a sense in which God's calling us to truly and soberly understand the world around us, and that is never going to be a fool's errand.
No.
As long as it's done with openness, curiosity, and
curiosity. Yeah, that's what you did to me immediately when I saw the book. I saw the title. I saw the beautiful artwork. I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to know more. I have to know more, and I want my community to know more, my family. So thank you for increasing our wisdom, because wisdom is what our end game is. And awesome. I just pray nothing but blessing over you and the work that you're doing. Please, dumbing it down for us, please.
Thanks, Janelle. The curse of knowledge is one editor called it for me. It's like the curse of knowledge. You understand it, but you need to help other people understand.
I want you to help us, Drew. Hear that. That's very, very wise. So thank you. Many blessings, and maybe we'll have you back if you ever have the time to go down that. I don't know. It'd be so great. It's just you're just so amazing. Thank you so much, and bless the work that you're doing with your students. They're very blessed to have you. Very blessed.
Thanks, Janelle.
Okay. Okay, Heartlifters. Wow. That was a lot of intense information. This will be an episode I will definitely want to download the transcript, which is available wherever the podcast is, wherever you listen to it. And please join me at Janelle Reardon on Instagram or at Heartlift Central on Substack. Ask me questions. I'll ask Dr. Drew, and we will just continue enlarging our worldview and mastering tough subjects and just having an answer for those who come along our path. And sometimes we won't have that answer, and that'll be okay too. Until next time.